When we target niche lists, we target for motivation, not just size of the list. Niche is motivation. Small is just sheer size. What does targeted motivation means? It's a need to sell. Not a want to sell, a need to sell. High margin deals, high profit deals does not mean these are high value properties. When you are dealing with highly distressed property, the faster you can get to these properties, the better it's going to be. You cannot go from foreclosures to probates to tax delinquent to absentees. When you in your business are doing all the lists, you're spread way too thin and you don't have enough knowledge to tackle any one deep enough. Anybody else that is struggling with generating deal flow and getting consistent deals and everything like that, that's what we're here to do. Is consistent high profit deals. All right, not just close any deal that comes across your plate. You know, it's that mindset, I think, that hurts us so many times. It's thinking that everything that comes across we need to close, and that's the furthest thing from the truth, because whenever just anything comes across, it's hard for you to specialize on any one thing when you're looking at literally everything. So in this training, I'm going to teach you how to niche down. Niche, whatever you feel like calling it. Everybody's got their way of saying it. I heard the proper term is niche. But when you say the riches are in the niches, it doesn't quite rhyme as the riches are in the niches. So, you know, marketing is one thing. Now, what I want to do before we get into the actual nuts and bolts of all this, and you're going to want to stick around to the end, because I'm going to give you the biggest secret to marketing a niche list that you've ever heard. So make sure you stick around all the way to the end, so this doesn't just get wasted. What a niche list is not. Let's start with that. What it's not just a small list. So I have students that tell me, hey, John, I had a list of this many properties, but I filtered it down to just this zip code. Filtering it down to a certain zip code or a certain price range does not equal motivation, right? You are marketing to a very small list, but that's not a niche list. When we target niche lists, we target for motivation, not just size of the list, all right? What it happens to be is the more motivations you add to it, the smaller the list is going to get, because the amount of people that hit all of these different pain points are going to be few and far between. But thinking that a niche list is just a really small list, you are so wrong. I have people that they tell me, hey, I have the list of like 50 properties. And I'm like, cool, what got you to 50? Well, I just drove a neighborhood and that's all I got. That is not a niche list. That's a small list. So that is the difference between a small list and a niche list. Niche is motivation. Small is just sheer size. Right? So we're not targeting small lists, we're targeting niche lists. So I hope that that makes sense. And again, like always, guys, if you're watching live, make sure to just drop any questions in the chat so we can address them. Now, niche, again, means targeted motivation. What does targeted motivation means? It's a need to sell, not a want to sell, a need to sell. If somebody doesn't need to sell, then there's very little motivation. If somebody just wants to sell, that's when you get those responses of like, well, I'm just shopping for the highest offer, or if I don't get this number, then I'll just keep it. Any of those responses, it's a lack of motivation. You're targeting the wrong list. That is not a motivated list. When you target a motivated list, the price is almost irrelevant, because what we're targeting is the motivation, not the price. And this is why we're able to close six-figure deals. And it's not that hard, because the motivation is there. The need is there. Now, a quick little sidebar on high margin deals. High margin deals, high profit deals does not mean these are high value properties. This doesn't mean that these properties need to be $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 properties. We have made $130,000 on a $220,000 home. You understand? Like, it's not the value of the home that matters as much as the motivation. Now, obviously, if the value of the home is 80 grand, then the chances of you making more than that is going to be very low, right? So it influences when you're like, I guess below 150, but even below 150, I've made 70 and $80,000 deals. So it's not necessarily the value of the home, but the value of the motivation. That's where the margins are made, not the value of the home. I just want to be very clear with that, because a lot of you guys tell me, John, that doesn't work over here because my median price is 220. I'm like, I don't see why it wouldn't work. You understand? And most places in the US, like if you're below 200, I'd be shocked, because even the most, small towns, you're still above that number. So targeted motivation is that, simply that. Now, data quality matters. What do I mean by data quality matters is the source you get the data from. So when you have an option between PropStream and Deal Machine, I prefer to go with Deal Machine. PropStream, their data is really old, and most of it has been wrong, especially when you try to niche down. When you do massive lists, PropStream's all right because, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. But when you want precision, I've seen that Deal Machine is a lot more accurate with their data than PropStream has been. All right. With that being said, I still prefer county data. County data is as close to the source as you're ever going to get. If there's a distress, say a foreclosure, tax, probate, pre-probate, anything of the sort, it's going to hit the taxes first. It's going to hit your county data first, right? Then all these other providers pull from there. The difference is, how often do they pull? Do they pull in all the cities and all the counties? Are there counties they don't pull in? All of this information is where you get delay. And why this matters is the next point is speed to lead. When you are dealing with highly distressed property, the faster you can get to these properties, the better it's going to be. If you take too long to get to, let's say, a pre-foreclosure, then by the time you actually get to the pre-foreclosure, they're kind of burned out, right? Because they've been approached by literally everybody in the market. Everybody in your area, every single person has approached them already. So because that's happened, they're burned out. So when you approach them, you got to be really freaking good. And this doesn't mean that you can't. We still do deals weeks after they've been posted because we stand out. When people talk about, John, but there's so much competition in the market, I'm like, there's competition at the bottom, not the top. Most wholesalers, investors' skill set is bottom grade skill set. They don't have the skills at the top. So I'm not concerned with those people. When we talk about niche lists, and I show you the parameters in a bit, you're going to see that it's not just a list. Like, they just don't know how to approach these people. So it doesn't really matter to me like what competition is, because I've been at this long enough to know that there is no competition. I'm not worried about, we're in a market in San Antonio of over 2 million people, ton of wholesalers and wannabe investors, and we still close deals every single month. Go figure, right? Like, what a competitive market. We don't close small deals. We're still doing minimum $50,000 wholesales and up. So it's not about that. It's about the quality, right? So speed to lead does matter. It's going to give you a massive leg up. Now, you got to specialize on a motivation. What do I mean by this is that you cannot, hear me, you cannot go from foreclosures to probates to tax delinquent to absentees to divorce to this, to this, to this, to this. When you in your business are doing all the lists, you're doing none of it. You're spread way too thin and you don't have enough knowledge to tackle any one deep enough. That's why your profits are so shallow. That's why the deal flow is so inconsistent and all over the place, is because you are inconsistent and all over the place. You have to specialize. And lastly, we're going to hop into actually building out these lists. So let me see, make sure that this transition works well. Boom. Okay. Looks like the list is coming through. Cool. So this is part of one of my module trainings that I do in my mastermind. So again, if you guys are interested in that, the link is in the comments, pwmcall.com. pwmcall.com, and you can schedule a strategy call to make sure this even makes sense for you. It doesn't make sense for everybody, I promise you that. So this is the breakdown. Pre-foreclosures, pre-probate, water shut-off, absentees. These are pretty much base lists. All right. So what do I mean by base lists? These are the ones you're going to start with. You're going to pick one, not all of them. You're going to pick one, and then you're going to pick on specializing. So in pre-foreclosures, this is our criteria. We do 10 plus years, deed of trust. Why we do 10 plus years? And we do 10 plus years on every list, okay? Every single list I pull, I do at least 10 plus year of deed of trust or last tax sale date, like a deed transfer. The reason for this is it increases the chances of there being enough equity in the deal to close a deal. When a lot of people do foreclosures, they do foreclosures on properties that have been foreclosed that they bought 5 years ago, and there's just not enough equity in there. Even the motivation could be ridiculously high, but the equity isn't there. Now, are there other strategies you can use for this? 100% there's other ones. Are you going to make $100,000 on those strategies? No, you're not. But you can. And there's a lot of people that love making pennies. So if that's you, keep doing that. If you want to make thousands of dollars, then do it this way. We look for institutional lenders. Why? LLCs, individuals, stuff like that, they're very difficult to work with, and they will not collaborate when it comes time to it. So every time we've dealt with an owner that was an LLC, we've had to have our attorney send a demand letter just to get any kind of response from these guys, right? So they're just a pain in the ass to work with. It makes it very hard to move forward quickly. So we just bypass those people altogether. And we want the original loan amount not higher than the median plus 20%. So why we target the median, I've done this in previous trainings. I've explained this to you guys before. If you haven't seen it, go back to my YouTube. There's previous training on pillar number 1. So why the median matters is the median is going to show you demand of the market. This is something that bugs a lot of agents because all the agents brag about is the average. The average means dick to me because the average is such a skewed number. A very high price home can sell, throws the averages off. A very low price home can sell, throws the averages off. The median is telling you where the demand is. So now hear me out. This is very groundbreaking strategy. If you go where the demand is, the likelihood of you making money goes up drastically. I know you've never heard that before. And the reason why I find that so amusing is because it's that simple. Market to the price points where there's demand at. If there's no demand at, let's say, $230 in your market, why are you marketing at that price point? I had a student once that they struggled to flip a property, which was, like 200-300% over the median. And they're like, I don't know why it's not selling. I'm like, that's why. Right there. You're way over the median. So now you're hoping that you nail the right seller. All right. So obviously, hope and praying doesn't lead to any deals. So we want to make sure we're targeting, and then I'll go 20%, right? Because I mean, if you're around the median, that's where you want to be. It doesn't have to be like if the median in San Antonio is 310, then I won't look at anything at 320. No, it's not like that either. I'll go to 350, even 375. And then obviously in pillar 1, I show you how to niche down the market. So you'll know how to make those decisions clear. Pre-probates. What do I like about pre-probates is that somebody passed away and they own a property. If you're in a state like Texas, you can do affidavit of heirships, which bypass the probate process. So this helps you in helping the homeowner save a shit ton of money by not having to hire an attorney, wait the months that it's going to take to go through court and all the nonsense they make you go through. We bypass that whole process. So pre-probates is a very solid list. On all of these, we do single family ourselves. You can do these in any type of property type that you prefer, but we look at single families. Again, the median price. We also got to use the 10 years of deed of trust or last sale date to determine these. Water shut off. Water shut off, the reason I have a little star next to it is because this is a list in and of itself. Like you really don't have to do all that much to this list. So water shut off is a list not every county provides, but the counties that do provide it, it's going to be a very small list. It's not a massive list. But you got to understand there's 2 reasons people typically shut off the water. One, they don't plan to be in the property for quite some time, so they're shutting off the water, which that's curious. Why aren't you planning on being in the property? A vacant property isn't, a thing you want to shoot for. And then number two, they live in the property but can't afford the water. I mean, water being one of the main necessities, if you can't afford that, you're struggling. You're going through some real problems. And back in San Antonio, before the dumbass mayor that we have banned it, we used to do water shut off because there were people that they're like, I didn't even know I could sell my house. Yes, please. They're like, please take it. I didn't know I could sell it, being that I can't afford the water and all these things. Like they were struggling, and that money we were able to give them for their home helped them out to start all over again. Like it was tremendous. So this is a list in and of itself. In some counties, you're probably going to get 1 or 2 properties a month out of this list. But just closing one of those can make you 40, 50 grand or more. So it's definitely worth the search. Now let's get into absentees. Again, as you can see, absentees, same thing, right? 10 years or more. Owns 5 or less homes, right? I don't want to go absentees that own too many homes because if they own too many homes, they know what the hell they're doing. And typically they don't need to sell at any substantial discount because, again, they know what they're doing. Anybody that owns 5 or less could be somebody that just decided to get into it, picked up a few houses, and quickly realized they're kind of in over their head, right? And they don't have enough experience to know how to handle, the liquidation of these properties. The appraised value, like we talked about before, these are square footages that I like to target. Really, anything over 2,500 square feet makes it for a much bigger renovation, which means your buyer pool gets dwindled down tremendously. Not many buyers can handle really big rehabs. So that's why we target 2,500 and above 1,000, just because anything below 1,000, it's like, again, it dwindles down the buyer pool, how many people want a home that's 800-900 square feet, right? So not that you can't do those, but remember, every strategy I teach is for maximizing your reach and your profit potential. It's not for, can you get lucky every now and then? That's not a scalable strategy. So I hope that resonates. You're built, this is for us in Bexar County in San Antonio, because any houses pre-1978 tends to have either aluminum wiring, 2-prong wiring, or cast iron plumbing. These are things we don't want to deal with. Us, personally, I don't want to deal with those. I get to cherry pick. We buy the majority of the deals we generate, so I get to cherry pick. This is my criteria. This criteria is going to be heavily determined by your buyers, which is pillar number 2 that I teach. Your buyers are going to tell you what year builds they want houses in. If you have buyers that are telling you, well, just buy anything that makes sense, that's not a real buyer, okay? They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. That's why they say that. I'll buy anything that makes sense. Well, what the fuck else are you going to buy? Things that don't make sense? Like, of course you're going to buy things that make sense. Duh. But that doesn't help me, right? That doesn't help me narrow this down. So you want to narrow this down by your buyer's criteria. Owners need to be absentee or out of state, and no LLCs and no trusts. Okay, I don't want to deal with LLCs or trusts. I want owners, because again, remember the 5 or less. Anybody that's not using an LLC, typically they're not skilled enough to know what to do when they need to liquidate a house. Now, if you do absentee, it's gonna include out of state, and if you do out of state, it's gonna include the absentees that are out of state. So you don't have to add both criterias. The reason why I say this is, like, if you use a system like PropStream or Deal Machine, if you do absentee and out of state, the system is going to do is just filter just out of state. So it's going to get rid of any absentees in state. All right. So just know that difference and pick correctly. So if I pull a list in, let's say in St. Louis, and I'm pulling absentee, and I see my absentee list with all these criterias is, I don't know, call it 4,000 properties. Then I'm going to remove the absentee, and I'm just going to add the out of state. And I'm going to see if I can shrink that down. Because apples to apples, I'd probably rather be with out of state people that have a distressed home that don't live even in the state. So travel, everything becomes a nuisance for them. And lastly, not on the MLS. All right. I don't want any properties that are listed. It makes no sense. Expired listings, This is another list that it's all right. Not a tremendous favorite list of mine, but it's all right. Same criteria as before, all the same ones. All right, and obviously they're still not on the MLS, but these are expired listings. Somebody listed the property, they do want to sell, but for whatever reason it didn't sell. So when we pull the expired listings, you typically have pictures of what the posting was. I like to skim through them. If I see that house is really dated, that's probably why it didn't sell. Maybe the house is too dated and it just doesn't like nobody wants it and the homeowner is really distressed and they don't know what to do. Would be worth the shot. Now, all of these, they're the initial, I want to be clear on this. Listen up. They're the initial criteria we start with. Base amount of data. This is what we start with. This is the base. All right. This is not niche. Not yet. This is the base. Okay. Let's make sure we got that clear. So this being the base of the list of what we start, now we add the motivators. All right. If that didn't make sense, drop a comment and ask me further. I'll elaborate as much as you need. So now we throw motivators. So even pre-foreclosures. Now I pull my pre-foreclosure list. This is everything I look for, right? But shoot, that could still be 70, 80 properties a month. So now I'm gonna look at, not necessarily tax delinquent because I know they're behind. So if they have a mortgage, usually the mortgage takes care of the taxes. But I will look at pre-probate, meaning is the owner of this pre-foreclosure deceased? Because if the owner's deceased, guess who has the property now? The heirs. If the heirs have the property, most heirs don't give a damn about the property. They don't want to deal with it. So if the heirs have the property, now we have a reason to go after it, a lot harder, because the heirs are probably going to be not interested at all in capitalizing all the profit that's in the deal. I have spoken to so many heirs that the property's in foreclosure and they're like, oh, dude, I could care two shits about that property. They can take it for all I care. It's like, well, look, if I was to just give you $500 right now and you sign over your interest to me, would that be worth your time? Just $500, sign a few sheets of paper and you're done with this? Yeah, I'll take $500. Now I own equity in a property that could potentially be worth tens of thousands of dollars, if not 100, right? So this is what I would talk about stacking, right? This is how we stack and we niche down the list. So it's funny because you stack, right? Which means adding, but because you're stacking motivators, you're actually niching down. So you're making the list, remember, not smaller, you're making it more motivated, all right? Tax delinquent, I would use with pretty much pre-probate, absentees, and expired listings. I would use the tax delinquent. So if I have the tax delinquent, which in most counties is a massive, massive list, I will take this list and I will I will add it to one of my base lists. Not the water shut off, because again, this list on its own is so small. So you don't need to filter much. But on the pre-probates, absentees, and expired listings, I would definitely add the tax delinquent to it. I will also add pre-probate to the absentee, to the expired listings, and like I said, to the foreclosures, right? So I would add that feature to see if this is expired and the owner's dead, another level of motivation. Code violations, same thing. Code violations, I hear these, I don't know, but I don't know what their name, but these idiots on Instagram and stuff, they're like, oh, I got the code violation list for you guys. Here's the code violation list. Dude, the code violation list is nonsense. It's not a motivating list by any means. The city can slap a lien on your house for damn near anything. It doesn't mean that it's going to foreclose anytime soon or create any problem. But the code violation stacked on other motivators, now that gets me excited, because now you're adding real financial distress and the county hounding them, right, potentially, on top of everything else that's been there. But standalone, it's not enough of a list. That's why tax delinquent is not enough of a list standalone. You want filters. You want to go deeper on these lists. Dismissed bankruptcy, that's another one, right? If you can pull the dismissed bankruptcy list for your county and then you cross-reference against any one of these properties, now that gets exciting, because they file for bankruptcy because obviously they can't take care of their payments, and that bankruptcy has now gotten dismissed. Why did it get dismissed? Are they just so far behind they can't even hold up the bankruptcy? Like, there's a lot of motivating factors there. Vacant. Again, any one of these that the house is on top of that vacant gets me very excited, because pre-foreclosures, a lot of people think that, well, they're in foreclosure, they're motivated. No. 10 out of 10 foreclosures that we call are not motivated. We got to dig deeper, right? But now, why is the issue? Is because if they live in the house, their pain point is, where do I go? But if the house is vacant, that pain point, that it's not even a pain point, but that objection goes away, right? Because where do I go? They're already there. They don't have to worry about it. Now it's just, how can I get rid of this burden that I have, which is this foreclosure? So a vacant house is something that I love cross-referencing all of these with, and it gets exciting. And also your list will go down substantially, a lot, when you add vacant, because not many of them are going to be vacant, but the few that are going to be powerful. And then divorce, same thing. You add any of these problems on top of a divorce, now you have massive issues, right? Divorces are stressful enough. I had people that, man, they just get so grimy. They get so vindictive during a divorce. And I get it. It's a tough situation. So you add all those emotions on top of any one of these, and you're talking about, like, these people are going to be really motivated to let go. And lastly, evictions. Evictions is another reason, right? Especially with the absentee. So you have absentee with all these criterias, and then maybe it's a tax delinquent or a code violation and an eviction. Like, now you're talking about maybe a handful of leads. So how we use this list ourselves is, in Bexar County, we market to about 18 properties a month. That's it. So when you're marketing to 18 properties a month, your focus is so narrow that you can go so much deeper on every single one of these properties. You understand? With 18 properties a month, guys, I can hit it calling, texting. I can call it many different times, try different scripts. And if I'm not getting through to anybody, I can start searching for heirs. Anybody that's related to the owner of the property. Can I get a hold of the heir? Can I see if somebody else in the family can help me do this? When you do massive lists like everybody does, you can't dedicate that level of time to this. That's why, remember, when people say, what about the competition? There's no competition at these levels. I'm not concerned for competition. That shit doesn't happen at these levels. You understand? So when you're doing this, this is why we niche down. This is why we narrow down a list exactly like this. Because when you narrow that down, that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get a very targeted list, a very high likelihood of motivation, and not many people have gone after it. Because most people, they do the very basic search, they get the basic list, and then worse yet, they hire VAs to do the work. I mean, I love VAs. I use VAs all the time, but not for this. This is something that needs to get done by me, right? Or by one of my acquisition people that are in-house. Because when you contact these people, it needs to be handled. The way I do it is, the first call is the call to do everything in. At the end of the first call, I'm either contracting or scheduling an appointment. There is no follow-up call. Not with these niche lists. If you're pulling a niche list and you're having follow-up calls, you're not either niching down enough or pushing enough. Which takes me to the big secret I wanted to reveal. What is the big secret with all this? It's not the list. Everybody always says, oh, the list is what I'm missing. The niching down is what I'm missing. No, you're not. I promise you. That's how you do it. Exactly like that. That's it. And you still won't be able to close deals. Why? Because niching down isn't enough. You need to know how to approach them. You need to know how to handle those issues. When you have heirship issues and there's no probate or will done on the property, do you know how to handle that situation? When you have an heir that's telling you, dude, I do not want to touch anything. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. And you can offer to buy a partial interest in the property. You got to know how to do that. You understand? So the skill, the thing that actually monetizes these lists is not the list. It's your skill on doing that list. That's the whole reason why I started my mastermind, is to teach those skills on high margin deals, right? Because the list, I'm giving it to you. That's the list. Go pull it and let me know why you keep struggling to close a deal. Knowing how to close matters more, matters substantially more. You got to know how to push. You got to know how to ask the right questions, the intros, the text messages, the follow-ups, the digging, the research, the genealogy research, the heirship issues, the liens, the judgments. All of those things are learned by doing this type of work, because that's where the money is made. I have so many people that tell me, like, John, the foreclosure list in San Antonio doesn't work. I'm like, I can show you my bank account that you're wrong. You understand? Because we make a shit ton of money on that one list. So what do you mean it doesn't work? It doesn't work for you because you don't know how to convert them. I saw somebody on Facebook recently talk about, oh, I had to walk away from a deal because they had all these judgments and liens and all this stuff. And I'm like, the only reason you walked away is because you don't know what to do with it. To me, that's where the work begins. There's judgments, liens, all this. Oh, but title, John, title said this. Title doesn't know shit. All title has to do is close deals. Most title companies don't know how to deal with this. We're the ones that know how to deal with this. We're the ones that know how to ask the right questions to attorneys. We're the ones that know how to speak to our attorneys and dig deeper and figure out what needs to get done. You know how many of my attorneys, they tell me, they're like, dude, I couldn't do what you do. And they're the ones that know the law, but they couldn't do it that way that we're doing it. They don't have the balls to deal with all these problems. They're like, oh, I start dealing with heirs and all this nonsense and all these nightmares and everything. And I don't care for that. I know. That's why we make a lot of money. You understand? So again, the secret and the key to all of this training is not in the list. The list is a big key, but it's how you approach the list. The secret, the key, everything is how you approach the list. How are you approaching the deals? How are you getting all these things done? That is the key to all of this. So if you're interested in going deeper in this, in learning the tricks, in learning all the techniques and everything you need to learn, then just schedule a free strategy call with me. I'll break everything down for you. If you're a good fit and join the mastermind, that's what we do. We do call reviews where I review all your conversations with sellers, deal reviews, analysis, breakdowns, negotiations, everything you're going to need to lock these deals up consistently. You understand? And then you by yourself making $500,000 a year is beyond simple, like beyond simple. The reason why you don't is because you're just overthinking. You're not sure how to do this, and you're trying to go with the lowest common denominator of a deal. And then you're shocked when you're making pennies, 20, 30 bucks, $1,000 on a flip, maybe 40, but you risk 50 or 60 to renovate it. Like, it blows my mind. It blows my mind that people are still doing it, but it's also because of that. All right. So I haven't seen any questions coming through. So that pretty much wraps up the training. And I hope this made sense. If there's anything still left in this that is not clear to you, which, I mean, to be frank, like this is the tip of the iceberg, right? Like we've been doing this for 13 years. There's so much more that goes into getting these lists, but at least this is the list that we pull. We try to go straight to county or to the county, to any of the providers that have the data, not necessarily the big providers. We go to the source as much as possible. So if anything was left, curious or you're not sure about, then just reach out to me. My Instagram, John Barbera, or even here, or you can book a strategy call and we can just get you set up and sort it out and make sure that you start closing high margin deals. And this is not just for wholesalers, guys. I started this whole thing as a flipper, as a rehabber, because I wanted bigger rehabs. These $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 rehabs wasn't cutting it. Now we do 6-figure rehabs consistently because of this. You understand? So it's more about targeting the right properties. All right, cool, guys. Well, hope that helped. Hope this was powerful for you guys. If it is, just give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, give me some support. It helps me get more reach out there. So I appreciate the love and the help with all this. And anything you guys need, just reach out. I'm very accessible, and wherever you reach out to me, you get me responding. All right. So nobody else responds. It's just me responding. All right. So thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you on the next training.